Hello, everyone. Whoever's new to this, remember this is just entertainment. Nothing more. It's an open thing. Some random dude writes notes. Today's note is: could planning be the enemy? Could it? And then I discuss. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. She is secured for the next 2 years, yet she's planning everything to the detail. And she keeps saying, let go, let go, let go. I could not, I don't know. I did what I do best, which is basically keep asking questions until she was like, what the fuck are you doing? I just want somebody to listen. And I was like, sorry. But in all fairness, I'm new to this game of just seeing people process things with me. I never got to actually have enough people to process with. So I don't really understand how properly noticing when people are kind of like engaging for the sake of engagement or just kind of like feeling comfortable and like letting loose so that they can see what's going on with them. But overall, something that intrigued me about the entire conversation was my view on how she is kind of planning, which took me back to there's a beautiful guy. I need to get his name. He it might like if I were to look at modern day, I don't want to say public speakers, but the like if we are to in, if we are to look at how the history of public speakers slash self help slash motivators slash all these kinds of things, the history of how they have kind of been evolving with the times. It's funny because something I say, most of the things I say are things that I've seen 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12, 20 years ago, that I've tried to engage with and tried to implement. And I kind of figured them out differently because I heard them from people like that are generations away from me, or just like from a different kind of like culture and a different economy, different society. So it always lingers differently. And there's this guy who discussed how planning, when it comes to a startup, when creating a plan is one of the most useless activity we could actually be doing. And it hit me hard because I was like, yes, I don't have to make a plan. It's fucked up. I'm still gonna make the plan. But in a way, he uh, he doesn't really explain it. He just points at the fact that startups have to grow dynamically because startups are experiencing a different way to approach what already exists. You can plan as best as you could, but your resources are things that have existed before. Unless you're copy pasting something that already existed before, planning is perfect because let's face it, everything you have is kind of like there. But you have to plan fast. I really believe you have to plan fast because depending on where you are, if you're planning something and it takes you 3 months to plan, you might actually make it. If it takes you 3 months to research and a month to plan, then you're probably kind of like hitting everything is kind of changing because whatever you plan for summer might not be the same for winter. And if you include that in the plan, then technically you're planning a year in advance and anticipating what the future trends would be. And I think the cutoff is like 6 months. So whatever you want to do, I think if it's big enough that is not really seasonal, then I really think that planning in general is those are the things that you actually have to plan. Like I'm planning 10, 20, 30 years ahead. But I really think the bigger things cannot have a plan, but can only have steps. And and you can't like build towards them. You have to kind of figure out if their existence, how it would look like, and then take steps back until you reach where you are right now, and then slowly start kind of like building on top of that. And again, it's the approach for me where am I planting a garden that needs to be rows and completely systematic and like with water pipes and shit like this? Or am I planting like different kinds of trees and then as they grow, I plant in between them different kind of bushes and as they grow, I plant in between them different kind of like shrubs and like vegetables and vines, like depending on what your vision is. But overall, I really think planning is the enemy because most of what we would be doing, especially when we're attempting something new, becomes working on the plan. And I fell into a trap like that many times before, where the plan is never enough because people are always going to want to ask you questions and are going to point at different areas and different things, and you're always going to have to go back and adjust. It becomes an exhausting way for you to actually approach. It becomes an exhausting way for you to approach your project. It's just like you're literally including everything else instead of just the things that matter to it. Because everyone would come from a different perspective, and every variable that shows up is showing up from a different angle. And ultimately, you still don't have enough strength tangibly for you to have. Like, if you're planning something, you're planning it on a solid structure. If you have something solid that's existing, then plan, yeah, because you know where you're moving from. But if you don't have something solid that's actually like, and when I mean solid, I don't really mean like a space. I mean like something that's already moving and building its own momentum. And at one point, you have to look at it and go like, okay, we've been steady. Okay, steady maybe is a better word instead of solid. But so the reason why I actually like, I could not, I tried my best to understand her perspective, even though every single time she'd mentioned a plan and she'd always like respond with, I know, and I have to let go, but like I still, there are stuff that's needed and things like that. And I understand completely. But again, coming from a corporate job to building a startup, she has a different experience than me. I am coming from a complete kind of jungle environment where everything's raw to trying to build a startup. So I'm more of the raw nature where society was kind of like pure and honest. It was there were plans, there were structures, there were all these things, but still like the economy wasn't like, I don't know, wasn't I don't know, world class, I guess. How would you call it? I'm not meaning anything by it. It's like it's young, it's still growing, it's still building itself, it's still figuring things out. While she worked in places like London and Dubai, where like the structure is to the core, but both of us are approaching our own startups. And for me, I realized that if I keep planning, and I realized that the first 3 months I started on this project, is you go talk to people, they expect stuff to be convinced, and each individual needs his own thing. It's like kind of like when you're applying for a job, like every CV record, every place you apply for, you kind of have to tweak your CV. But then the only time you succeed is if you're applying for like 100, 200, 300 places at the same time. So building your CV and applying becomes a part of the job you're getting, because your literal existence becomes, I have to update my CV, I have to create a new cover letter, I have to research this company, I have to do all these things. When I was like, when I graduated in 2007, that wasn't the case. It was like just mass spamming, build CVs left and right, just like apply, 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 apply. We had websites for those. It wasn't personal. But so a structured approach towards like a startup versus a non-structured approach. I realized that if I keep planning, all I'll be doing is planning. So that's when I started like working in software and I started studying software, and I moved back to Lebanon for that specific reason. And my goal was to kind of like learn, and I'm not being very efficient at evolving from how I work with software, although I can always figure something out. But the goal was for me to kind of like start building the website and learning from it and understanding what it needs and how my vision fits on it, so that when I actually go and talk to people, I actually have something more solid and tangible in my hand to work with. And I felt like the planning part of everything is always just an exhausting element that saps your energy for no reason. I really could just ask Google a couple of questions anytime I want, and then eventually you have kind of like an outline of how you'd like to work. And that sorts everything out. Why the hell create a plan? Well, you could just be like, I have to finish this, and when this is done, I have to finish this, and then figure out a deadline. Technically, that's a plan, but that's not me planning, right? I don't know. Could planning be the enemy? So planning is different than having a plan. But how do you have a plan without actually like going through all the drama of planning and multiple like facets of and the details of all that kind of shit? I don't know. I figured, man, that's something interesting to actually like mention, specifically because most of the time the plan is what constricts us. Because if we're actually following a plan, then we're not really focusing on how the market is going to react to us, especially as a startup, again, startup. Because if we're big enough, then we change the market for our own sake. We make a plan and we shift everything. We advertise, we market, all the media that we have under our like fucking fingertips. We can move the entire market once we're big enough, and then planning basically is a must. But till then, we have to find out these like small things that would require our adjustments. And I don't think planning would actually get us any closer to being able to notice them and building that experience. Ah, so planning is the enemy. I really believe that. At least now, like no, when you're starting to look forward to growing as an individual and building something, then planning is definitely the enemy. You literally have to kind of work with what you have, and you have to kind of work as best as you could with it. And that's basically a skill that you build through the experience of interacting with it and communicating with it. Anything else would just literally be you wasting energy because you're not feeling very, I don't know. I don't know. It's just like, I don't want to say anything that might get me in trouble. But feelings, baby. Yalla, bye.